Hi, everyone. Super excited about this panel. We have three companies today that I think are really intensely focused on delighting customers: McDonald's, Whole Foods, and Postmates. I'm Terry Angelos from Visa. We run a group inside of Visa called the Visa Commerce Network and basically help our clients build better commerce applications. A lot of that is based on data from the 100 billion transactions that sort of Visa processes every year. So just to kick it off, quick intro and a quick note on what is the one thing that you think where consumers' expectations have changed in digital for each of your businesses. And for me personally, I panic when I talk to a company that doesn't have customer support over Twitter. I'm like, what do I do? So Eric.
Sure. So my name is Eric Moujaes. Again, work for McDonald's. And I think the thing that really has changed probably in the last few years has really been the expectation that everything has to be real time. There's no lag, and you send a letter in, you send an email in, with messaging, all these different components, you see that somebody has read that message. So everyone is really expecting that instantaneous feedback. We really don't have time to waste as people anymore. So trying to meet that expectation, I think, is a very difficult one and a great challenge to try and meet. And there are a few brands that are really doing a great job of that, I think.
Hey everybody, Nichele, Lindstrom, Director of Digital Marketing at Whole Foods Market. Terry, I think your question's a great one. For me, I think it's the comparison of every last best experience. I expect those things to carry into my next experience, even if it's a different vertical or a different type of service. As a consumer, I don't really care. I'm like, why can't Whole Foods be more like Uber, or why can't McDonald's be more like Postmates, things like that. So we've kind of lost the. We've got new expectations that from companies that we may or may not be aligned with in terms of our ability to compete.
Great. Yeah, my name is Holger Luedorf. I'm responsible for business development and partnership at Postmates. Postmates is an on-demand delivery service. We're clearly here the startup on this panel, and probably less known than some of these other great brands. We deliver groceries, mainly prepared food and also retail. And my story is actually very much related to Postmates and also kind of this notion of instantaneousness that Eric just mentioned. I have a 13-year-old daughter. My oldest daughter just wanted to order something. She wanted to actually order a new pair of Steph Curry shoes from the Nike site. And she asked me, like, when are they going to arrive? Like, I have training tomorrow. I would love to wear them. And I'm like, well, it's going to take like 7 or 8 days. And she's like, well, what are you talking about, right? I mean, she grows up in a world where things are, at most take 2 days, because most of the stuff that we order on retail is actually through Amazon. And now with Postmates, you can actually get a lot of things within an hour. So for her as a 13-year-old, I think she grows up with the expectations that things should arrive really, really quickly. And I think I'm convinced that in 18 to 24 months, we'll see more and more things becoming available same day or even same hour. And I think her generation will not even know anything different than that.
Kind of funny aside, I had someone at Visa try to explain to his 12-year-old son how an analog camera worked, because he had this summer camp he had to go to with no electronics, and it was like, what do you mean there's 12 photos? Like, okay, only 12 photos. Well, how do I see them? Well, you can't see them. Like, how do I delete them? You can't delete them. And just this idea that you actually had 12 things that you had to like click in advance, and then when you're done, it takes a week to actually get the photos back. Anyway, back to our panel. Nichele, this is a question for you. About 6 months ago, Visa put out some data about how our cardholders who are on-demand customers, so they use ride-sharing, they use apps like Postmates and Grubhub, et cetera, and how are their spending patterns different than the average Visa cardholder. And there's some fascinating stats there. They spend something like 5x more on restaurants, which kind of makes sense. It's more of an urban kind of cardholder. But they also spend 40% less on groceries. Now, that was the whole category. Maybe they spent more on Whole Foods. And a question I had for you is, how do you guys think about, with these new expectations and some of these new apps, like, how does that impact your business? Clearly, you want people to be spending more on groceries and not less.
I think for us, it's really about, and you've probably heard this 1,000 times during the last couple days for those of you who've been here, it's meeting the customer where they are, being in the places where they're already interacting, and creating really frictionless experiences. So as we were just talking about, the expectations have fundamentally changed. So the kind of on-demand expectation, being able to not expect that we're going to be able to move consumers from channel to channel. They want to stay where they are. If they're in Messenger, they want to be in Messenger. They've chosen Messenger for a reason. And so it's really about trying to be super nimble, not getting attached and like investing too much energy and time in kind of really kind of honing in on like a particular place that we want to be, and instead trying to experiment. We're a big company, we're trying to act like a small company in that way. And as much as we can, and in the places where it makes sense for us as a business and it's scalable, meeting those expectations as best we can.
Right. And is some of that partnerships? I mean, you guys obviously have a close partnership with, say, Instacart and a few other companies. Is that potentially the last mile for a certain, part of your customers?
Absolutely, and for us, that's about scale and speed, right? So for us to build out that kind of distribution would take us a long time when we've got a partner like Instacart, or if we partner with Google in some markets for overnight and shopping express. Those kinds of things just let us meet that expectation all the quicker. And especially when it's a service like Instacart or Google where there's an embedded customer base already there. Yeah. So not only do we get to hit scale faster, we also get to tap into those people that are already using that service, as I mentioned, and we're not asking them to move.
Yeah. And so Holger, maybe on that theme, I mean, is Postmates and companies in that kind of last mile, do you see yourselves as that connection point between these, kind of in the past unreasonable expectations of delivery within an hour or delivery while I'm not home, and then if that's the case, how do you work together with these brands? I mean, Whole Foods once they want to differentiate themselves from other companies on those platforms. So how do you guys think about both the opportunity and some of the tension?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, so first of all, we have a very attractive user base, right? I think a vast majority of our users are millennials, affluent, urban, and so forth. We're operating in about 40 US markets, doing like close to 1.5 million deliveries a month right now, right? So when I joined 2 years ago, we did like less than 10,000 deliveries a month. You can kind of see what the traction is. And the interesting thing with merchants is I think we're pretty agnostic. Like we have a very, very strong consumer brand, and I think that's what most people know us for. But we actually also have a Postmates API that we launched over a year ago, and there's companies like Apple and others that are actually using it to power their e-commerce experiences. So we're totally okay if you want to order an iPhone from the Apple Store in the Postmates app. That's one way to do it. But if you go to apple.com in San Francisco or New York, for example, and you go through an order flow, you order a laptop or an iPhone, you actually have a choice between FedEx, US Mail, and then same-hour shipping with Postmates right there as well. And we power that. That's our dispatch technology, our fleet, and so forth. So we think that kind of same day or even same hour delivery in, again, 18 to 24 months will become much more ubiquitous. And we don't necessarily need to own the user. We want to be one way to do it, right? I think our consumers think like, I want something right now, I'm going to go to Postmates, because unlike any other company out there, the one thing that I think is a huge differentiator for us is we have a product called Postmates Anywhere that you can point at any merchant in a city, whether it's the Nike store, Whole Foods, McDonald's, or Chipotle, or whatever it is, or your local boutique or restaurant, and we will deliver from there, right?
Although thinking like a couple years ahead, is it also okay if I go to Whole Foods and I click a button and it's delivered by Postmates? So from your perspective, as long as that's your expertise and that's the last mile, and you'll have both of these consumer sets. Okay.
We consider ourselves an on-demand logistics company, right? Not just a delivery service.
So Eric, maybe a question for you. We talked a little bit about the different kind of delivery experiences with McDonald's, and you had mentioned a couple of places where in some cases you actually do your own delivery, in other cases you have partnerships. Talk a bit more about that aspect, and also just like how important is the in-store experience? I mean, do you want to smell the fries while you're waiting? Like what? Sure. Like help me understand how that works.
Yeah. So as you're talking about in China, contrary to the U.S., like the delivery business is a tremendous component of what we do. And as you mentioned, we actually are, in a sense, the Postmates. we act as our own delivery drivers. We have all these, you see all the mopeds, everybody's out there with their McDonald's branded helmets and everything. And it's just fascinating to see the kind of contrast between here and in some of those markets, which I would argue are sometimes 5 years ahead of where we are today. And we're doing mass volume of delivery there. And so I think it's important to have that kind of anywhere, anytime convenience, that I can just call up somebody, go to a website, pull up an app, and be able to bring that product to my home. But it's also, as you mentioned, we don't want to forget what it's like to go into a McDonald's. I remember as a kid having that feeling of going into McDonald's, going into a play place, getting that Happy Meal toy is such a powerful brand connection that I will never forget. So we look at it not only as trying to remove the friction in terms of how quickly and how easily I can get my food, but in those other moments when I've already received my food, what can I do to provide some entertainment? What can I do to provide a moment of kind of togetherness between you and your family? We're between all of those. We're at the center of all of those different connections along your journey through the day. So if that's music in the store, if that's something through Wi-Fi, let's say when you connect to Wi-Fi at our store, we have an opportunity to engage with you. Let's think about all those different steps in the customer journey and how we might be able to provide some added benefit or delightful experience for them.
So so the idea that today I think of McDonald's as sort of geared for convenience, just the way the store is set up. If the convenience part starts to happen through delivery, and perhaps I go to McDonald's for the experience, we maybe see some changes. I hadn't thought about in-store Wi-Fi and music, and those experiences actually become a more pleasant in-store experience, and you might see that shift over time. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think we're making a tremendous amount of investment in our in-store experience. You can see we're starting to re-image a whole lot of our stores. If you go to the Front Street store right over here, it's a completely reimagined McDonald's in-store experience. I think they did a great job on that. But that doesn't mean that we can't provide that same type of entertainment on the out-of-store experience. I thought Munchery did a really great job. I ordered some food from them the other day, and there was a partnership with Google in which it was dinner with music with your dinner. And so there was a follow-up email. There was actually something I received in the mail, and you now have that chance to do something beyond just being that source of food for somebody. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of in-store, Nichele, you guys, I think, announced a bot yesterday with Conversable. Mm-hmm. And tell us more about that. Is that supposed to be an in-store experience? Is it kind of this ubiquitous experience? What does the bot do?
It's both. So the bot we launched is a recipe finder based on a couple of different insights. One, that we know people do more than half of their recipe searches in store in an aisle. So we wanted to be able to tap into that behavior that's already happening. And then second, that we know people are already messaging in our stores. They're asking a spouse, hey, do we have onions? They're asking whether somebody has a dietary restriction, things like that. So putting those two things together, it just made perfect sense for us to start with the recipe search use case. It's also an experience where it's kind of nice sometimes to be guided. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I want to go to all recipes and search, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of user-generated submissions, and sometimes I just want someone to tell me the best thing to make with this shrimp. And so we felt like in that moment, in the shopping experience, was a great time to feel really guided. We've got a number of other kind of recipe experiences that I think actually really complement that. So you can use the bot in store, you can use it wherever you want, but we've also got a recipes app that's got all 4,000 of our chef-tested recipes at your fingertips if you want to do more of that kind of browse or more extensive search experience. And so for us, I think it's not a question of necessarily in store or out of store. It's really about what is the kind of use case, what's the need at that moment, and then how can we provide the best possible digital solution to meet you in what you need. And
is commerce coming? So right now this is just advice, but at some point, can I get the recipe delivered to me, or some other action happening at the tail end of the interaction?
Yeah, potentially. We're exploring a ton of different use cases, and I think for us it's about, again, trying to really find those specific moments where you can really marry the functionality of the technology with exactly what the customer needs. And I think I think Baron from Pizza Hut said really, really eloquently yesterday, you have to make sure that what you're creating, what you're putting out there, is not harder than like the next best option, right? So if it's easier for me to head to the store or to go to Instacart than it is to make the order through the bot, then there's no reason for me to make the order through the bot. So making sure that we're really focused on where are those really specific use cases, where the intersection of the customer need and what we can provide with the technology to make things as easy and seamless and simple as possible and feel really natural. So I think we'll explore, a ton of different things where we can go with the bot next. It could be any number of directions, and commerce is certainly on the list.
Well, we do have one very good use case. So in preparation for this panel, we were discussing this, and Eric owned up to the fact that his fridge is looking pretty sad. You might have to retweet that. So why don't you?
Please tweet it
I think
again.
he has my
So
phone number.
I asked him to take a photograph of his fridge and be,
So I travel all the time. I will be honest, I had to clean it up a little bit. It was a barren wasteland filled with dead organisms. But the picture, if you go back in the tweet
It'll
stream,
be back up.
Yeah. It's pretty sad, just rotten vegetables. So.
And it happens the opposite too, right? Like my fridge is like 30 pounds of onions because I can never remember whether or not we have onions.
So how far away are we from? It just seems like your fridge should be able to order like some milk and some cheese. So when you come home from a trip, like there's something in there, and anybody will deliver it for you. But Holger will personally make sure you get something delivered. We want you to be healthy. But are we far away from that? It just seems that we talk about the smart fridge. Is that something that's in the 5-year future, or is that going to come next year? Holger, maybe you have a perspective on this?
I don't actually know how far away we are from the kind of the smart fridge, but we see it every day, right? People, and I included, I have 3 kids. On the way, and we have 2 working parents. We order food or groceries, kind of just before we head home, and then usually the Postmates arrives actually with groceries or prepared food by the time we arrive, because people are kind of actually short on time, and they're actually willing to pay for the convenience of having something delivered to them, right? Because it actually saves another hour and a half that they can actually spend with the kids at night. But I don't know. You guys probably know more about the smart fridge.
Can put you on the spot.
Oh man, I have to make a precise prediction. I'm not going to make a precise prediction. Sorry. I think it's going to come back to how quickly do customers and consumers decide that they really need it. So there are options out there today, and I think how scalable is it? I guess we'll see. I'm really excited about them personally as a human because I think it removes one of the kind of fundamental pieces of friction, particularly in food and grocery. Like that moment of, do I have onions or not? Eric, is there milk rotting in my fridge or not?
Rotten milk.
And so to me, that's where technology can really solve a fundamental pain point that has not been touched today. And there's not like a great way to figure it out today other than just like calling my husband and being like, I just bought onions again, sorry.
Yeah, but I think what you both said is really important is the scalability side of things. Because I have 1 million people a day that email me about some cool new technology that they want to apply to McDonald's, but trying to do that for 70 million people every single day for a bunch of operators all over the world is a very difficult challenge. And again, trying to go back to the expectations that customers have, their satisfaction is expectations minus reality. So we have a very, very big goal to hit, and trying to do that every single day, 1 million times a day, is a very difficult challenge.
So everyone who has a smart fridge app who wants to email you should hold off for now until like 50 million of the 70 million look like your fridge. All right, so the panel is about kind of where commerce is going. So one of the questions we've been thinking about is, let's take something as fundamental as driverless cars, right? So McDonald's has built a very successful business with a drive-through that's based upon a dining experience in your car. Like, what does the world look like maybe in 10 years' time when we really do have driverless cars for maybe both of your businesses and your business too, Holger? I mean, to see a bunch of driverless cars running around. Like, what could you just sort of predict may happen or hope may happen, for you guys?
You talked about convenience. We talk about at McDonald's this new definition of convenience that people have. And it's trying to give back time to people. So if I don't have to figure out where the nearest McDonald's is, I don't have to tell them what my favorite is, remember my most recent order, it's abstracting that part of it so I can focus on maybe it's doing my email, spending time with my kids, not having to reach back like we were talking about on the phone, take an order from everybody in your car. It's removing that other step that you can now give back to spending time for other things that are more important. So I think, again, back to driverless cars, it's not having to pay attention in the drive-through, know exactly, I just need to grab my food and go. Let's eliminate as much of that friction as possible.
For the record, I wanted to have a tablecloth because I'm not driving anymore, so I go to
did bring that back
McDonald's
to
and just put the tablecloth down and actually have a nice McDonald's meal. So.
I hope that drive-thrus never go away as a parent of a young child. I think there's always going to be a need for things like that, and even if the car is going to drive me through the drive-thru, I think that there's still, those human needs, right? Like really not wanting to take my 2-year-old out of his car seat because it's the worst and he doesn't want to get back in. And so, again, the technology meeting the need in a way that just makes my life 1,000 times easier.
Yeah, and my perspective is, coming from the delivery business, we're very excited about seeing driverless cars, or it could actually be like these little, kind of little containers. They don't have to be like full-size cars, but they, I could totally imagine in the next 5 to 10 years, those kind of things zipping around, kind of a little bit like, in WALL-E and some of these futuristic movies, but they basically driving around and bringing people their food or their groceries. That's why, by the way, I actually thought about the previous question. I'm not even sure if people are going to have like pre-planned grocery orders, filling their fridge automatically. Maybe it's all on demand, kind of depending on what you feel like in the day. The one thing I don't believe in is that drones are going to drop pizzas from the sky.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I just don't think, it's certainly for prepared food, I think that will be very, very difficult. For retail, how large can these items be, right? So I think that's actually further away, but I think driverless cars, there's things that people are testing this on college campuses. I think it will start very small, but this is actually happening now. So I think that is probably 3 to 5 years away from us seeing that in a city like San Francisco or similar.
I have a 3-year-old, and we live in Mountain View, so we have a lot of those little, mini Google cars. And every time she sees it, she goes, "That's the robot car." So clearly, their generation is going to have, a lot more of these recognizable, bot cars. So maybe you mentioned, some things that you think are not going to happen. What do you think is overhyped? I mean, all 3 of you guys have real businesses at scale. Yeah. I'm sure you get a bunch of emails about something's going to radically change your business. And what is overhyped, or what's taken slower than perhaps you had expected?
I don't know. I've been excited about a lot of the drone stuff that's going on. I think we're still at a gap of, I think the most recent regulations still are within line of sight, not beyond line of sight, and that's a big kind of threshold that needs to we need to move beyond. But I feel like some of the things I've been seeing recently in terms of new capabilities, look at some of the most consumer drones coming out, collision avoidance, all these different capabilities are now making that more and more of a reality. And I think within an urban environment, having a person delivering me food is a lot more realistic than, let's say, a suburban environment where I don't have the density of population to be able to deliver food that quickly. Drones can really open up the opportunity to have McDonald's brought to my home in the middle of where I'm from, Beaumont, Texas, right? We're not going to have that many delivery drivers, I guess, within that area. So,
it's that same question of, is it scalable and is it cheaper and more effective for my business than the next viable alternative? So drones, maybe, if they end up getting to a point where it's easier to deliver via drone and cheaper to deliver via drone than it is via driverless car. I think the point you just made about urban versus suburban is really prescient, and will probably play into that business equation. I'm trying to think of something else that I think is like a big question mark. I think if you had asked me a year ago or a year and a half ago, I might have said bots.
Yeah.
And the speed at which things have shifted in that landscape, I would have been a liar a year and a half ago.
Is there a better name for bots? We're just talking about messaging. Mm-hmm. Maybe bot is the wrong name. It's just I just want to message you and ask a question, and maybe we call that a bot. That sounds silly, but really it's the fact that I just want to use my device to send you something, and expect myself to be authenticated to get either a human answer or a automated answer. Is that maybe why we thought bots were overhyped, or do you think there is something fundamental in the AI that's driving it?
I think for me, it's the advancements in AI and NLP and things like that that have really made it incredibly viable and incredibly exciting. So being able to have a conversation in the way that I would text a friend. And I think that the reason I actually don't mind the term bot, because it encapsulates that idea of it's a robot that I can talk to. And I think that's really, it captures that idea of the intelligence behind it and the automation behind it. I think a lot of speakers over the course of the last 2 days have talked a lot about the personality and infusing those kind of the technology with the personality. So I like the term bots.
All right.
I'm going to stick with it.
I'm sorry. One of the things I thought when I was reading today was people go to Google for an answer, right? We're searching, we're trying to get the solution to something, but you still have to do a degree of investigation to figure out what the right answer is. So for McDonald's, as an example, being able to talk directly to that brand and ask a question that's specific to our space, hopefully we can reduce the amount of time that it takes to get that answer, whether it's, hey, I'm looking for something that's less than whatever amount of calories, or where's the nearest McDonald's? All of those different scenarios could provide a much more streamlined way for people to find things for them. So that's why I'm really excited about bots or messaging as a channel. Like in China, we use WeChat to deliver. We did a small pilot to do customized burger ordering through WeChat. Like WeChat's just another channel that I think will become, messaging, just another big place for people to visit.
Yeah.
I'll take a different tact. I think, actually, I'm not sure like for which use cases bots actually really going to work in Messenger, right? Comes back to what Nichele said earlier. If it's more complicated than kind of any other means to do something, why would I do it in a Messenger format? I am actually a big believer in voice. I actually, even 6 months ago, thought like voice, there was always kind of versions of voice in the past. But ever since the Amazon Echo, and I don't know how many of you guys have tried it, and I just actually turned something on where I can actually operate my Spotify Sonos system at home and just basically tell it like, hey, play a Stevie Wonder song, XYZ, and it actually plays it, right? And I can even like dedicate it to a certain room. And that to me is like mind-blowing. And again, like our kids, they just kind of totally naturally start talking to, the Echo and like making these commands. And like voice is something we use every day, and I think that's going to be, that's maybe something that is, it's kind of like a bot, right? Instead of like actually text, it's voice. You can give the same commands and have the same kind of dialogue. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah. We have 2 minutes left here. We probably have time for 1 or 2 questions, at least one question. I don't know if we have a mic out there. All right. We have? All right. Questions for our panelists here. Right there.
Hey, a lot of focus on this whole bot discussion has been around new channels for brands and businesses to acquire new customers, right? What do you guys think about the customer support angle of how messaging can play a role of really, first of all, saving costs for the business, because you move from phone calls to messaging, which means multitasking for an agent, and also obviously the potential to use automation in that flow.
I think we actually talked about this before the panel. I actually just had a customer support kind of use case via Twitter, which is kind of in a sense, especially if you use direct messaging, it's another messaging channel. I think that's, for me as a customer, that was an awesome experience because I got immediate feedback. I don't have to pick up a phone. I don't have to go to a store. I like that, but it's probably more relevant to you guys.
Yeah, I think that for me, the holy grail that will tie together kind of all of the pieces of the customer experience, including care, is when all of these things have a single back end, right? When my bot is powered by the same thing that powers my CRM, is the same thing that powers my other marketing and personalization channels, so that you can truly have the conversation with a customer the way you would with anyone else, where if I email a care channel and then I text the bot, the context is there between those two interactions. I see huge potential for care in bots, particularly for the kinds of questions that we get all the time. When is a store coming to XYZ area? Things that can really easily be automated in a way that you can do it in social, but it's a lot more natural and makes a lot more sense in the context of that kind of machine-driven conversation.
And do you guys all provide some support over these channels today?
Yeah, we do.
We do, yeah. And I think it's going to come down to, I think one of the benefits of putting something publicly on Twitter is that you almost have to respond to it as a brand. We obviously have ways that we engage with that, but if brands aren't able to meet that level of expectation that's in a messenger channel, I'm going to go straight back to the public forum and slam you and try and hopefully get you to remedy the situation.
All right, great. Well, that's our time. I want to thank our panel so much for joining us. I look forward to my smart fridge connecting to my drone, connecting to my Amazon Echo, and making sure that my fridge is full of the right groceries. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.